Lound, Lincolnshire, a quiet rural hamlet and close-knit community which would become the setting of one of Britain's most disturbing murder cases.
You have an ordinary guy who is subjected to unprecedented levels of violence.
It's the most shocking murder that I can remember covering.
A local gardener, liked by all who knew him, left a nearby pub on the night of October 21st, 2009, and went home alone. What followed was a gruesome 3-day nightmare of entrapment, torture and murder.
A man living a quiet, unremarkable life is murdered in this way. I've likened it to a bomb going off in that village. The effect could not be underestimated. People just couldn't believe it.
We were all kind of terrified. We started locking our doors. People wouldn't go home on their own.
The first 48 hours of any murder investigation is crucial to the understanding of what took place. Within this narrow framework, the police are often able to identify a suspect and a motive very quickly. But what happens when the trail goes cold? I'm criminologist Donal McIntyre, and in this series I've brought together an unrivaled team of specialist investigators. We'll work with the original detectives to re-examine and to bring to light new information and hopefully to find some closure for the friends and families of the victims of some of the most shocking and impenetrable cold cases.
It was absolute devastation because in the beginning we just thought he died. We did not know that he'd been murdered. We did not know the extent of how he'd been murdered.
The grisly murder of Alan Wood, whose killer has managed to evade capture for over 6 years. We retrace his last hours on the fateful night of his death. We talk to people who knew him, and our team reviews the old evidence and some new theories in an attempt to discover who killed Alan Wood. Sue Foster and Ella Jenkins were two people who knew Alan well. They remember him as a decent and kind friend.
Alan in one sentence. A kind, big, cuddly teddy bear. I had never, ever heard him say a bad word about anybody. That's how kind he was.
A true gentleman. He'd do anything for anyone, wouldn't hurt a fly, and had no enemies. He was just a really nice, ordinary bloke.
His previous life as a gardener, he was working in a prison. Was there a possibility that he fell out with anybody there, or that anybody that was in the prison may have just decided to take a dislike to him? The murder remains a mystery, and all the more so because of the viciousness of the attack upon him. The attack was vicious, torturous and sustained. What could possibly have motivated someone to kill a mild, unassuming man like Alan Wood? That evening, Alan was spotted here at his local Morrison's in Stamford. After a few drinks, Alan said goodbye to his friends and left through this door here, got into his beloved Jag and headed home. It was the last time he was ever seen alive.
Alan decided he was going home, got up and said goodbye to everyone and left, and Paul was the last person to see him alive. He was finishing his fag out on the doorstep. He said goodbye, and Alan was supposed to be coming to ours for Sunday dinner. Never made it.
The intruders barged violently through the front door and attacked Alan repeatedly. What's believed to be two men dragged him to a room in the house and bound him with tape. Over the next couple of days, he would be subjected to horrific torture, enduring multiple stab wounds to the head and face. He was also stabbed in the eye. The perpetrators took Alan's bank cards. They attacked him repeatedly. They tortured him and eventually left him to die. On the 24th of October, the Saturday, his body was found in his home by a neighbour who alerted the police.
A work colleague and friend went on the Saturday to check on Alan. She went first to the front door. She noticed the front door was open. She went to the side door. The side door was also open. She went back to the front door, but she was uneasy. She didn't go in. So she went next door and sought the assistance of Alan's landlord. Together they went into the property, and in the lounge they found Alan's body. Police were called. It became apparent very quickly that Alan's death wasn't natural. It became apparent it was a homicide. It became apparent it was a very brutal one. It was a very dramatic scene and very quickly became a very dramatic investigation. There was a great deal of blood in the property, and one of the striking things was that Alan was bound at the wrist with sellotape.
11 metres of sellotape. He was repeatedly stabbed in the head, tortured, in effect.
You wouldn't expect that sort of violence or the restraints. Alan Wood doesn't sound like the person who would have fought back.
He had his throat slit and he bled to death in his own home.
The brutality of what had happened is something we've never heard before in our area. It's the most shocking murder that I can remember covering.
As we've heard, Alan suffered repeated knife wounds to the head. He also had his throat cut. But most horrifically, his attackers attempted to decapitate him. So there's a possibility that if he had used a prostitute, or if there was somebody, a woman he was interested in, that she could have come to his house and then opened the door, and then in came through the perpetrator.
We did have quite a serious problem in parts of London where prostitutes were used to facilitate robbery, and some of those robberies were extremely violent. So it is a possibility that either someone that he knew had come to see him, or in fact he'd invited a prostitute that allowed access.
But the fact that his attackers were so brazen to take out his ATM card, get out some cash in full view of the CCTV cameras, that is significant. Following his death, these images were captured from CCTV cameras at ATMs locally. Timestamps of the footage correspond with the time that withdrawals were made from Alan's account.
It started on a Thursday evening and it went through to the Sunday. The first use was around 9 p.m. in a town called Bourne, just a few miles away from where the victim lived. There was repeated use of the cards then, and then on the Friday in a market town called Stamford, also not too far away, and on the Saturday and on the Sunday.
The man pictured is believed to be Alan's killer.
And that's what we call the iconic image of ATM man, the man with the baseball cap and the scarf. We've not traced that man to this day.
So with all this information and detailed CCTV, what sort of person do my experts think was behind this callous murder?
What we found was that some of that blood yielded DNA which didn't belong to Alan. From the places we found it, I was convinced, and I'm still convinced, that DNA belongs to one of the people involved in Alan's murder.
In relation to this theory of mistaken identity, is it possible that somebody in the supermarket, a regular attendee at Sainsbury's, would have simply mistaken him for the manager, somebody who had access to the keys of the safe?
I think everything is possible if you don't actually know the motive, which I'm not too sure that the police do. There is that money's been taken, but it is a possibility, and I'm sure that's part of the investigation. But even if you took Sainsbury's as the reason, the level of violence to obtain keys for what is not a mega store, is it? It's a reasonably modest store, is still quite excessive. And the level of injury, it was very personal, a very personal attack. Certainly whoever did that attack would have been quite comfortable using a knife or a bladed article.
Perhaps one of the reasons Alan's killers have never been apprehended is because they're no longer in the country. Lincolnshire has a significant migrant population and the police have made extensive inquiries amongst those communities. Did they think he'd access to the overnight safes and access to the overnight keys to the store? Their potential rewards, when they realised their mistake, had gone from hundreds of thousands of pounds to just a couple of £100 from a cash card. Did this mistake fuel the frenzied attack on Alan Wood?